Hi, and welcome to Recognizably Jewish, the podcast where we explore the Jewish cultural inheritance. I'm your host, Jason Spitelnik. This is episode 1, Shalom. I want the podcast to speak for itself, but I think it may provide helpful context if I briefly introduce myself and talk just a bit about my motivation for doing this. Let's start with a bit about me. I'm an Ashkenazi Jewish guy in my mid-40s. I grew up in a predominantly Jewish New York suburb where I attended Hebrew school at a conservative synagogue until my bar mitzvah. All 8 of my great-grandparents immigrated to New York from Eastern Europe in the first decades of the 20th century, and I'm actually lucky enough to have known 3 of them well when I was young. My extended family on my father's side would gather for occasional Shabbat dinners at my Bubby and Zadie's apartment. Zadie had been a kosher butcher in Brooklyn. Bubby made homemade gefilte fish and what we all called Bubby cookies. They spoke English, but it was still heavily inflected with the Yiddish of their youth. My upbringing was not particularly religious or doctrinal, but it was wonderfully and inescapably Jewish. I was active in Jewish life in college, but it was primarily a social experience. Over the course of my adult life, first in New York and now in Denver, I've maintained limited connections to Jewish institutions, but my Jewish identity has always remained vital. That's because for me, Jewishness isn't defined by a particular orthodoxy, denomination, or set of religious practices. And I think that's true for millions of American Jews. Simply put, there are those of us who appreciate that Jewishness is a culture as much as it is a religion. Of course, for many, including me, that culture often does include religious observance or celebration. High holiday services, Hanukkah candle lighting, Passover seders, Purim carnivals, dinners in the sukkah, etc. But the key point is that it encompasses so much more. Think about eating Jewish food or doing the hora at a wedding or bar mitzvah. Think about playing Jewish geography, attending a Jewish summer camp, or being part of a local JCC. Think about connecting in some way with Israel or the Hebrew language. Think about taking pride in the accomplishments of renowned Jews throughout history. Those are the aspects of Judaism that have always been most appealing to me, and that's what I mean when I talk about the Jewish cultural inheritance. After October 7th, that inheritance felt even more essential to me. I love podcasts, and I sought out podcasts that might deepen my own connection to Jewish culture. I found lots of great podcasts about Judaism as a religion, about Israel, and about Jewish perspectives on current events. But I didn't find a simple, informative podcast specifically about Jewish culture. Before October 7th, I might have just made peace with the fact that there was no such podcast and moved on. But at a time when so many of us are trying to find ways to express pride and show solidarity, it didn't feel like the time to just move on. Creating a podcast about Jewish culture feels like one small thing I can do to contribute. So, what can you expect to hear on Recognizably Jewish? Well, the episodes I'm working on right now will hopefully give you a flavor of what's to come. Our very first episode will be about Jewish last names. When you hear names like Schwartz, Katz, Siegel, or Rosenberg, you know they're Jewish. Why is that? When and how did that come to be? I have another episode in the works about how the Star of David came to be the most recognizably Jewish visual icon across the globe, which happened surprisingly late in Jewish history. I'm also working on an episode about the fascinating life and times of David Ben-Gurion, the first Prime Minister of Israel. And I'm really excited about an episode on the most beloved of Jewish foods, the bagel. You should be able to find the podcast wherever you listen: Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube, etc. To find links, you can go to our website, www.recognizablyjewish.com. I hope you'll listen to some episodes and share the podcast with your friends, families, and Jewish communities. Thanks in advance for listening to Recognizably Jewish.